Dear students, welcome to English class. In this module, let's deal with a very interesting lesson from English textbook Hornbill. Prose 3, Discovering Tut, the saga continues. This is an article titled The New Face of King Tut, His Life and Death, written by A.R. Williams for National Geographic, Volume 207, Number 6. An introduction. Written by A.R. Williams, this chapter is about the last heir of the powerful Pharaoh dynasty, Tutankhamun, who died when he was a teenager after ruling for 9 years. He died in a mysterious way. This chapter throws light over all the possible mysteries, the curse, where his tomb lies, his life and ultimately death. Egyptians believed that there is life after death, and that's the reason why the pharaohs were buried with wealth and everyday used items. Dear students, please go through the vocabulary given. Let's see the history. Tut was just a teenager when he died. The last heir of the powerful family that had ruled Egypt and its empire for centuries, he was laid to rest laden with gold and eventually forgotten. Since the discovery of his tomb in 1922, the modern world has speculated about what happened to him, with murder being the most extreme possibility. Now, leaving his tomb for the first time in almost 80 years, Tut has undergone a CT scan that offers new clues about his life and death and provides precise data for an accurate forensic reconstruction of the boyish pharaoh.
More easily, King Tut is arguably the most famous pharaoh in the modern world. Also called the Child King, his rule is known for having reversed many of the drastic changes his father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, had made in ancient Egypt. Akhenaten, formerly Amenhotep IV before he changed his name, had led a religious revolution, rejecting the gods of old and promoting the worship of one single god, Aten. Aten is the radiant disk of the sun, originally an aspect of the god Ra. Due to the strained relationship between the pharaoh and the priests, Akhenaten moved the capital from Thebes to Akhetaten, Amarna, where he could work on this new state religion. The religious elite and general population of Egypt was not very happy with this change. The son of Akhenaten, King Tut became pharaoh at the age of 9, and early on in his reign, the old gods were reinstated. It was believed that Egypt was going through hard times because the old gods had been ignored during the reign of his father. He restored Thebes as a religious center, allowed his people to revert to the worship of the old gods, reopened the temples, and allowed the priests to practice once more. Since he was just a child, it is believed that King Tut wasn't truly in power, though, and may have been just a figurehead. He worked with powerful advisors to make Egypt a powerful force in the region once more. Horemheb and Ai, a high-ranking official of Tut's predecessor and the successor to the throne. Both of these men later became future pharaohs. He was one of the last rulers during the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom, one of the most powerful and prosperous times of ancient Egypt. But King Tut became a celebrity after his tomb was discovered and had more influence during the
Tut glides into a CT scanner. A fast, strange and unnatural wind was blowing as King Tut's body was taken from his grave called Valley of the Kings, an ancient Egyptian cemetery. Dark clouds moved quickly across the desert all day long, and later they covered the stars. On January 5, 2005 at 6 p.m., King Tut's mummy, which is the world's most famous mummy, was placed in the CT scanner to investigate the mystery behind his death, which had occurred more than 3,300 years ago. All afternoon, tourists visited the 26 feet deep underground rock-cut tomb to pay respect to the king. Many people stuffed into the small tomb and looked in admiration at the murals on the walls of the chamber and took a look at the face of Tut that had been painted with gold. While visitors read the guidebooks in a hushed tone, some stood silently wondering about his untimely death in his teen years. They might also be wondering if the curse of the pharaoh, which leads to the descent of misfortune upon the person who disturbs him, is true. Mummy in a very bad condition. As Sahi Hawass, the Secretary General of Egypt, leaned over the body to have a look, he said that the mummy was in a very bad condition because of what the British archaeologist Howard Carter did to it in 1920s. He discovered King Tut's tomb in 1922 after a long search. The valuable treasures of Tut had been explored earlier too, but surprisingly they were complete. The treasure found at Tut's grave is the richest till date and has come to be known as the Pharaoh's legend. It has artifacts in gold which are eternally beautiful and as good as new. Such artifacts still get attention. Tut was buried with things of daily use like a razor made of bronze, games, linen undergarments, and boxes of food and wine which he could use in the next life.
KV 62, King Tut's tomb is located toward the east of the Valley of the Kings. When discovered, it was one of the most intact tombs to have ever been discovered. The seals had not been broken, and the only evidence of intruders came from a time soon after the king had been buried. Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon, and their team were the first people in modern times to enter the site. The tomb itself was laid out in a way similar to those for private individuals, not royalty, which led to the conclusion that King Tut's burial was somewhat rushed. The 16 steps led down to an entrance corridor, which itself led to an antechamber. The room was used to store material left over from the funeral, along with objects used in the embalming process of the king. In recent years, it's been claimed that there are further rooms hidden behind walls, with King Tut's tomb suggested to be just the beginning of a much wider burial complex. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there may be 2 voids next to the burial chamber, but recent sonar tests have disproved this notion. The Egyptian ministry responsible for the preservation of the tomb announced in 2018 that there is nothing further to investigate. So, for now at least,
Problems faced by Carter. Howard Carter took a few months to record the treasures found in Tut's grave. Then he began investigating his 3 coffins which were nested one in another. In the first coffin, he found a piece of cloth with garlands of willow, olive leaves, wild celery, lotus petals, and cornflower, which suggested that he had been buried in the months of March or April. When he reached the third coffin, he was in trouble. The body had hardened due to the resins which had cemented the body, and it had stuck to the bottom of the coffin, which was made of gold. Carter wondered what to do next, because no amount of force could separate the two. Carter tried to loosen the resins by keeping the body in the hot sun. He kept the mummy in 149 degrees Fahrenheit for several hours, but still it remained stuck. He reported that a chisel could be used to cut down the mummy from the limbs and the trunk so that Tut's body could be taken out of the coffin. In his defense, Carter really had little choice. If he hadn't cut the mummy free, thieves most certainly would have circumvented the guards and ripped it apart to remove the gold. In Tut's time, the royals were fabulously wealthy, and they thought or hoped they could take their riches with them. For his journey to the great beyond, King Tut was lavish with glittering goods, precious collars, inlaid necklaces and bracelets, rings, amulets, a ceremonial apron, sandals, sheets for his fingers and toes, and the now iconic inner coffin and mask, all of pure gold. To separate Tut from his adornments, Carter's men removed the mummy's head and severed nearly every major joint. Once they had finished, they reassembled the remains on a layer of sand in a wooden box with padding that concealed the damage, the bed where Tut now rests. Dear students, please go through these words and their meanings.
His tomb was undisturbed by robbers, except for those that entered soon after his burial, and so it was full of stunning treasures. There were so many objects that Howard Carter and his team only finished cataloging everything in 1932, 10 years after his initial discovery. In total, 5,398 items were recovered. The walls of the burial chamber were decorated with images of the king's voyage to the underworld, and the chamber contained 4 gilded shrines, within which was a red quartzite sarcophagus, which contained 3 nesting coffins, with King Tut's mummy being in the innermost one. 3 models of luxury ships were found in the tomb. There was a face mask, golden thrones, archery bows, trumpets, a lotus chalice, and even fresh linen undergarments. One of the most interesting objects was Tutankhamun's iron dagger, which recent tests have shown to be made from a meteorite. Other treasures included a hand-carved statue of Anubis, a headrest, canopic jars that contained his organs that had been removed during mummification, a gold gilded fan, and hundreds of more statues, pendants, weapons, paintings, and other things, including his personal game of Senet, a popular Egyptian board game. Most of the treasures have since been removed from the tomb and displayed in museums around the world. The one thing that remains there and can be viewed by visitors to the Valley of Kings is King Tut's body, which has stayed in place ever since its discovery, although now moved a few feet into a climate.
Modern archaeology. In the past few decades, archaeology has changed as it now focuses on the details of life and the mysteries of death. Earlier, it was about focusing on the treasure. Now it uses more advanced medical technologies and tools for research. In 1968, an anatomy professor x-rayed King Tut's mummy and revealed that the front limbs and breastbone were missing. Now, with the advancement of technology, CT scan or computer tomography can give a virtual image of the whole body. With the help of this technology, King Tut's body would be scanned to find answers to 2 questions: how he died and how old was he at the time of his death. I hope the first half is clear. Coming up in the next module is the second half, dealing with the family tree, the curse, and Tut's legacy. Thank you. Bye for today.